All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the career of Justin Trudeau.
Oh, wow.
Canada's now former prime minister.
Right.
We've got this really great article from Reuters, it's called.
Okay.
Trudeau's star power dimmed after weathering pandemic and Trump.
Interesting.
So we're going to be looking at that and then a couple other sources. And we're going to go through his entire journey, for the beginning
Okay.
to his recent resignation after 3 terms.
Yeah.
And we're even going to get into some of the family drama. We're
Yeah.
going to be talking about Trudeau mania,
Right.
a term that was coined for both him and his father.
Interesting.
And then we're even going to get into like the political drama,
Okay.
that breakup with one of his closest allies.
Wow. Yeah, that was a big story.
Yeah.
Lots to unpack.
So you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's get into it.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
let's start with just like his initial success. I mean,
right.
it's not every day that a politician takes a party from 3rd place to winning 3 consecutive terms.
Yeah. It's pretty rare.
Right. So, can you just give us some context on how significant that is in Canadian politics?
Yeah. So in Canada's parliamentary system, the party with the most seats in the House of Commons, they get to form the government, and then the leader of that party becomes the prime minister.
Right.
So when Trudeau took over the Liberal Party way back in 2013, they were struggling. I mean, they were in a distant third.
Wow.
But, in just a couple of years, he managed to connect with voters in a way that few politicians can.
I remember that Sunny Ways campaign message.
Exactly.
It just captured everyone's imagination.
It really did, and it was a brilliant political strategy.
Okay.
He really tapped into a fatigue with the conservative government that was in power at the time.
Okay.
And he offered a fresh perspective, a more optimistic,
Yeah.
inclusive vision, and it really resonated.
Yeah. And then we can't forget about, the Trudeau factor.
Right.
His dad, Pierre Trudeau,
Oh, yeah.
was prime minister as well.
Absolutely. I mean, name recognition, the legacy, it all played a part.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just name recognition, though. He also had this undeniable charisma, this youthful energy, and it really drew comparisons to his father during the Trudeau mania years.
Wow.
There's even the story about him being mobbed by fans in Manila on one of his first trips as prime minister.
Really?
I mean, imagine, being swarmed by admirers in a country halfway around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, that's star power.
Wow, that's crazy. So it sounds like the media
Oh, yeah.
just couldn't get enough of him.
They couldn't. He was young. He's good looking. He spoke eloquently. He was a media darling.
Yeah.
And he used that platform to advance Canada's interests,
Okay.
especially when it came to dealing with a very unpredictable U.S. president.
You're talking about Trump, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those must have been some tense negotiations.
Yeah.
Especially with that trade deal.
Absolutely. That trade deal was critical for the Canadian economy.
Right.
And negotiating with Trump, someone known for his, unconventional tactics, was no easy feat.
Yeah.
But Trudeau, along with his foreign minister, Chrystia Freeland, they managed to secure a deal that was largely seen as a win for Canada. I mean, had they failed, we might be talking about a very different Canadian economy today.
That's wild. So we've got this charismatic leader with a really famous name, this captivating message of hope,
right,
and a huge win on the world stage.
Exactly.
It sounds like he was on track for smooth sailing.
Well, in politics, things rarely stay smooth for very long.
Right.
And for Trudeau, there was some trouble ahead.
Okay.
In the form of scandals and controversies.
Yeah, let's get into those.
Okay.
The Aga Khan vacation controversy, and then, of course, the blackface scandal. Can you give us a little more context on those?
Sure. So the Aga Khan incident involved Trudeau and his family vacationing on this private island owned by the Aga Khan, who's the spiritual leader, and also headed a foundation that received government funding.
Okay.
So the ethics commissioner found that the trip was a violation of conflict of interest rules.
Really?
And so the criticism was that Trudeau showed a lapse in judgment.
Okay.
And that he wasn't as ethically sound as he projected himself to be.
Gotcha.
And then...
Yeah, and the blackface.
Blackface, and yeah.
I mean, that must have been...
Oh, it was huge.
A big blow.
It was. Photos surfaced of Trudeau on at least 3 separate occasions.
Oh, wow.
Wearing blackface or brownface makeup.
Oh, my gosh.
And the images sparked immediate outrage.
Yeah.
Critics accused him of racism, insensitivity.
Okay.
Trudeau apologized.
Yeah.
He acknowledged that his actions were hurtful and wrong.
Yeah.
But the damage was done. It tarnished his image. Okay. Especially among minority communities who felt betrayed by someone they had seen as an ally.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. So despite all that, then he had to deal with the pandemic.
Right.
An unprecedented crisis. How did he navigate that?
The pandemic, that was a defining moment for so many leaders. Around the world, Trudeau was no exception.
Right.
And initially, his approach was really well received. Those daily briefings, calm demeanor, emphasis on following the science, I think it resonated with a lot of Canadians.
Okay.
Who were looking for reassurance, in uncertain times.
I do remember there was some criticism.
Yeah.
That, his constant presence in the media became a bit much.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Do you think that overexposure could have, backfired?
Well, I think while some people saw that constant communication as a source of stability, others started to experience some called pandemic fatigue. They were tired of the restrictions, the lockdowns.
Okay.
The seemingly endless cycle of news about case counts and variants.
Right. Yeah. And so Trudeau kind of became the face of the government's response.
Exactly.
And a target of some of that frustration.
Exactly. And it showed in the polls.
Okay.
His approval ratings, they had been relatively high at the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But they began to decline as the crisis wore on.
Which maybe explains why his gamble on that snap election in 2021 didn't quite pay off.
Exactly. He called that election hoping to capitalize on his pandemic management and secure a majority government.
Okay.
But voters just weren't convinced.
Yeah.
They returned another minority liberal government.
Right.
A sign that Trudeau mania magic had faded.
Interesting. So it seems like he was really a leader who thrived on that personal connection.
Yes.
On that ability to kind of project empathy and understanding.
Right.
But he also faced criticism for how he handled relationships within his own party.
Yes. And this is where I think we see a more complex picture of Trudeau.
Okay.
He excelled at connecting with the public, but he struggled at times with those more one-on-one relationships with his own team.
In the Reuters article, it mentions that several ministers who served under him actually wrote books.
Oh, wow.
About their experience.
Interesting.
And a common theme was difficulty getting past his inner circle.
Right. They paint a picture of a leader who, while well-intentioned, could be quite controlling in his decision-making.
Yeah.
Some ministers felt their voices weren't being heard.
Gotcha.
That their expertise wasn't being fully utilized.
Okay. And then, of course, there's the SNC-Lavalin affair.
Right.
Which must have been incredibly damaging.
It was.
Especially given his image as a feminist leader.
Absolutely. The SNC-Lavalin scandal involved allegations that Trudeau and his office pressured the then Justice Minister, Jody Wilson-Raybould,
to intervene in a criminal case against the engineering firm SNC-Lavalin.
Okay.
Wilson-Raybould refused.
Yeah.
And was later shuffled out of that justice portfolio.
Oh.
And she and another female cabinet minister, Jane Philpott, resigned from cabinet, citing a loss of confidence in how the whole situation was handled.
So it seems like those resignations were kind of a turning point. Do you think it signaled a broader loss of support?
They certainly raised questions about his judgment and leadership style. It really reinforced this perception that he wasn't as committed to feminist principles as he claimed to be.
And then on top of that, there was that very public separation from his wife, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau.
Right.
It's hard to imagine the pressure.
The pressures of political life are immense.
Yeah.
And for someone like Trudeau, who was constantly in the public eye, the scrutiny must have been just relentless.
Yeah.
And I think their separation, while amicable, it added another layer of complexity
to his personal narrative and likely contributed to the sense that he was struggling.
So with all this happening, it's maybe unsurprising that his relationship with Chrystia Freeland, his closest ally, also began to fray.
Freeland, who served as his foreign minister and then finance minister, was a key figure in his government. She was widely respected both domestically and internationally, and was even seen as a potential successor to Trudeau. But then they had a very public falling out.
They did.
There were disagreements over policy, over how to manage the economy, and perhaps even the direction of the Liberal Party. And ultimately, their clash led to Freeland's resignation, a move that sent shockwaves through Canadian politics.
Yeah, it sounds like her support...
It was a big one.
...was a significant blow.
It was.
...to Trudeau, both personally and professionally.
She was more than just a colleague. She was a confidant, a strategic partner. And losing her, especially so publicly, really weakened his position within the party and fueled that speculation that his time as leader was coming to an end.
So we've gone from sunny ways to political storms.
It's true.
From international acclaim to internal struggles.
Yeah.
And through it all, this name, Trudeau, has loomed so large.
Yeah, it has.
Invoking those comparisons to his father and the Trudeau-mania era. How do you think Justin Trudeau will be remembered?
That's a complex question.
Yeah.
And I think it's still a bit early to tell how history will ultimately judge him.
It's a legacy with many layers.
It is. I mean, on the one hand, he'll be remembered for his charisma, that youthful energy, his commitment to progressive values, climate action, gender equality, Indigenous reconciliation. I mean, he legalized cannabis.
He did.
He introduced a national carbon tax. He appointed Canada's first gender-balanced cabinet. I mean, these are significant achievements that will undoubtedly shape his legacy.
But then there are the missteps, the scandals.
Of course.
You know, the sense that he didn't always quite live up
to
the expectations that he set for himself.
Right. And those are part of the story as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the ethics violations, the blackface incident, the SNC-Lavalin affair, I mean, they tarnished his image. And they raised questions about his judgment and his difficulty navigating those internal relationships, particularly with strong, independent women in his own party. I mean, that'll likely be a point of scrutiny for historians.
It's a reminder that even the most charismatic leaders are human. Capable of both great things and significant flaws.
Exactly. And I think it's important to acknowledge both sides. When we assess Justin Trudeau's legacy, he was a complex figure who left a complicated mark on Canadian politics.
It's interesting how both Justin and Pierre Trudeau, you know, despite their privileged backgrounds, really tried to connect with everyday Canadians. Justin worked as a teacher before getting into politics.
He did.
And I remember him saying that those with fortunate upbringings have an obligation to give back.
He often talked about, you know, wanting to make a difference, to leave the world a better place than he found it. And I think that desire to serve, that sense of social responsibility was genuine.
But even with those good intentions, it seems like the pressures of leadership really took a toll.
I mean, the job of prime minister is incredibly demanding, especially in today's world with the 24/7 news cycle, social media amplifying every misstep. It's a tough balancing act. Maintaining that public persona while also dealing with the complexities of governing and managing relationships within your own party.
You mentioned earlier that the Trudeau-mania magic seemed to fade over time.
It did.
What do you think contributed to that shift in public perception?
I think there were several factors at play. You know, the scandals definitely chipped away at his image. I think they created a sense of disillusionment among some who had initially been really drawn to his message of hope and change. Pandemic fatigue also played a role. People just grew weary of restrictions and lockdowns. And then you add in those internal struggles within his own party, the resignations, the sense that things were kind of unraveling behind the scenes. And all of those things combined, I think, created a narrative of a leader who was losing his grip, who was perhaps not as capable or as transformative as people had initially believed.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the rise and fall of Justin Trudeau, what are your final thoughts? What will his lasting impact be on Canadian politics?
That's a great question.
And what lessons can we learn from this journey?
Well, I think it's still too early to say definitively what his lasting impact will be, but I do think his time in office will be studied and debated for years to come.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a charismatic leader who captured the world's attention, who championed progressive values, and who left an undeniable mark on Canadian society.
But he was also a flawed leader.
Right.
Someone who made mistakes.
Yes.
Struggled with certain aspects of the job. And ultimately saw his popularity decline.
He did, and I think his story serves as a reminder that leadership is complex.
Right.
Even the most promising figures are human. And that public perception can shift so dramatically over time.
Really can.
It also highlights the importance of strong internal relationships. Of building trust and fostering collaboration within a team.
So it's not just about the image you project to the public.
Exactly.
It's also about that work that happens behind the scenes.
It is. It's about those relationships that you build, the way you treat the people around you.
Yeah. That's a really great point.
And I think that's one of the key takeaways from Justin Trudeau's time in office. It's a lesson for any leader in any field, really.
Right.
About humility, integrity, and building that strong foundation of trust and mutual respect.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau's journey was full of highs and lows.
He was.
From sunny ways to political storms.
Right.
From global triumphs to personal struggles.
It was a wild ride.
It's a story that I think offers a glimpse into the complexities of leadership.
It does.
The pressures of fame and the enduring power of a name that's become synonymous with Canadian politics.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on his legacy?
Yeah.
What will you take away from this deep dive?
I'd love to hear your perspective.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.